Hi, I'm Judy Tyabji. Thanks for joining us today as we look at fish farming. We have a lot of issues in our oceans and in our economy. And when we look at the environment, we've already talked about car culture. Today we're doing aquaculture, we've done fisheries. We will also be covering air pollution and urban growth in the coming weeks. But today when we talk about aquaculture, we want to ask the question, what's happening with the economy and the environment? How do we look at this industry from the most responsible perspective? There's a provincial salmon aquaculture review which should be reporting out sometime this year. They're projecting that it may be this summer, but we think probably the fall is more likely. Let's take a look at the background to the issue. The Broughton Archipelago is a beautiful collection of islands off the northeast coast of Vancouver Island near Alert Bay. There's about 20 active fish farms in the Broughton Archipelago. Most of them are owned by international corporations. This is one of the heaviest fish farmed areas on the coast.
Gypsy 2, Blackfish Sound.
Samoom sound scientist Alex Morton has studied whales in this area since 1984. She noticed changes in the ocean in 1991. In the past 5 years, evidence of disease has been appearing in wild salmon stock, and Morton believes it originates in the farm fish.
When you get into corporate farming, then it's all numbers. You want lots of fish, lots of medication, whatever it takes. You just want to keep those fish coming.
And why do they medicate them?
They medicate them because they're having a big problem with disease. And this has been a big problem for our hatchery with the coho. When there's an epidemic on the farm, there's an epidemic in the hatchery. And the farmers have put sick fish in the water. They've admitted that. They've done it twice. And every time they do it, our coho start dying, and we have to drug them to keep them alive.
In 1993, thousands of diseased fish were released into the wild when a farm pen broke, and in the following year, wild fish were very scarce. In 1994, the BC government began to feel pressure to remove the fish farms for the Broughton Archipelago. Sahota, then Minister of Environment, failed to take action.
Look, I recognize the area is unique and sensitive, and I realize also that the area is a treasure in terms of British Columbia, and we've created a Class A park in that area.
What Sahota won't address is that the park classification is a farce.
There are fish farms within the park, but they have drawn the boundaries so that they're excluded. So the boundary looks a lot like an octopus. It has these little legs, and in the curl will be a fish farm. And it's a little ridiculous to protect an area right around a farm and then allow shooting and antibiotic dosages and pesticides to happen on a farm because it disperses in the current.
There's another perspective to the fish farm industry as well. It's an economic perspective. Let's take a look at some of the numbers. The fish farming industry brought $140 million into the BC economy in 1995 alone. 85% of fish produced were exported to Japan or the United States. 17 fish companies, mostly internationally owned, own 80 BC fish farms. Farmed salmon are usually the Atlantic, not Pacific salmon species. They have a different color and texture than Pacific salmon, and there's no law currently requiring that salmon be labeled as either farm or wild. More than 100,000 Atlantic salmon have escaped their pens and may have spread disease. The province called for an industry review in 1995, and that review should be complete this summer or fall. Now we're joined by Christine Hunt, who's with the Aquaculture Territorial Fishing Commission, which has been around for about 10 years and looks at fish issues, I guess. You can say fish issues 10 times fast. But thank you for joining us, and you've been very busy, I know, dealing with these kinds of issues. What role do the Aquaculture people or the Aboriginal people have in this whole issue of the oceans and fish farms and the future of our food?
Well, the government, whether it be the province or the federal government, has to consult with us before making any changes in the fisheries. So that's the role that we play. They consult with us.
Okay, there's the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and there's a Provincial Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. In all of these, there's been a provincial review. Did you make recommendations to the review?
Yes, we made, I think, 10 recommendations for the review, and I think the most immediate one would be an immediate public audit of all the existing tenures. Because of what happened on the west coast of Vancouver Island last week.
Now we're talking about the Ohuzit band who were
Right.
upset about a fish farm that was apparently not in the place it was supposed to be, and then someone vandalized the pen.
That's right. And there are red zones where fish farms should not exist because of migrating stocks, and the environmental assessment team came with our technicians last week to review some of the sites, and 2 of them they admitted should never have been put there because they were too close to shell beaches, and one was too close to a heritage site, and they admitted that they should never have been there. So I feel that an immediate audit of all the sites should be carried out, and of the surrounding areas that it affects.
So what you're saying is that you've got these fish farms sometimes being put in places where previously the ministry had said don't put them here because of a strong current or because of the way it's been situated.
That's right, they're called red zones.
Oh, I see.
And 42% of the fish farms in our territory are in fact in the red zones.
So do you work with the wild salmon industry as well, the commercial fisheries?
Oh yes, I do, and that's in direct conflict. They drive the price, the fish farms drive the price down because they're able to provide a uniform fish for the market, and although the industry is becoming more cognizant of the need to produce a higher quality fish, but it's a big competition. We're having a hard time in our coastal communities with the fish farms and what it's doing in the conflict with our commercial industry.
Okay, well that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit after the break, the difference between a farm fish and a wild fish, and some of the pricing issues. I want to thank you for joining us. We'll be taking calls in the second section as we talk to someone from the salmon fish farmers and also the author of Sea Silver, a book about BC salmon farming industry. Back after a quick break.
Tyabji is brought to you in part by CFAX 1070, Victoria's News Authority.
What if your sweater got shrunk?
Not cool.
What if your parents got shrunk?
Way cool.
That's what happens in Disney's brand new movie, Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. Now it's going to be total fun in your own home.
You are dead meat, mister!
And your parents, they're just along for the ride.
Honey is dead.
Now you can own Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. Get shrunk, now on video.
CDI College opened opportunities I never imagined possible. They gave me the training I needed for success in the current technology job market.
And they offered me the right options to suit my needs and schedule.
People at CDI really care. From my first phone call to the job search program, they were with me all the way.
Do you have what it takes? Serious technology training for serious jobs starts soon. Call CDI College of Business and Technology and prepare yourself for a new career.
Looking for Revenue Canada's office? It's moved. Now you'll find Revenue Canada at 910 Government Street in Harbour Square, near the corner of Broughton. The telephone and fax numbers are still the same. It's just the address that's changed. So if you need any tax forms or guides, or want to talk to someone about your income tax situation, go to Revenue Canada's new office at 910 Government Street in Harbour Square. They'll be happy to help.
In the late 80s, BC Lands did a coastal resource inventory study to find ecologically fragile areas where fish farms should not be located. They developed zones, red, yellow, and green, and these became the guidelines for the BC Ministry of Fisheries.
Red zones were supposed to have no farms in them. There are now 40% of the farms in the archipelago are in those red zones.
So it's kind of pointless to have that exercise.
It was very pointless, and when I asked them, why are you putting fish farms in the red zone, they said that they already had applications before the study was done. So right from the moment that they produced the study, it was a kind of a lie.
However, according to the book Sea Silver by Betty Keller and Rosella Leslie, the Ministry of Fisheries' lie was even bigger because the license applications that Alex is referring to were actually received by the ministry 2 years after the study was made public. So a lot to talk about. This is a huge issue, and there's no way we can do anything but scratch the surface today, but let's give it a valiant attempt. We're joined by someone who has a very different perspective from mine, Greg Davignon, who is the Executive Director of the BC Salmon Farmers Association. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, that's right. You're not ready to hit me yet.
Oh, no, not at all. Correct a lot of the facts, or the facts as you presented them, I suspect.
Okay, well, let me just ask you a question. Why are you farming Atlantic salmon in the Pacific Ocean?
Well, Atlantic salmon, I guess first and foremost, are preferred because they're a docile animal. I grew up in Chilliwack, so I call them the Holstein cows of the aquaculture industry. They have lower stress, and as a consequence, less incidence of disease and better health. They're the fish of choice in the international marketplace, and when you process them, the animals provide more flesh per animal.
So from an industry perspective, you're getting a better return on your dollar, sort of thing.
That's correct.
Okay, we also are joined by Betty Keller, who is the author of Sea Silver. I'm going to show you this book here. This book I would recommend if you want to go beyond what we're doing today. Sea Silver is a chronology of what's been happening in BC. It only takes us to about 95, but it's an excellent setup for what's coming this fall, because there's going to be a big debate this fall. How long did it take you to write the book?
It took a year. We had already been working on another book, which was the Sunshine Coast History, which involves the early history of salmon farming on the West Coast. And so our publisher said, hey, do the whole thing. We want to have the whole story.
Just quickly then, what was the role of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans in what did you find out as you researched your book?
Well, we got stonewalled a lot of the time while we were investigating it, because their point of view is that fish farming has to take the place of fishing. Okay. And they weren't really willing to tell us much.
So they were prepared to say, okay, we're going to go to fish farming instead of like the wild fishing industry. Yeah. Okay, we can start taking your calls, but before we go to the phones, Greg, you brought us a fish.
Well, I did. We're the province's largest agricultural export product. It's new money into the economy. In terms of your facts, the industry actually generated $175 million last year.
Okay.
And put $435 million into the economy of BC. And 90% of those jobs are in coastal communities. So I have a great deal of respect for Christine, but we differ in terms of the impacts, and as does the Environmental Assessment Review, which clearly says that this industry is a sustainable industry when properly cited, and
you're talking about the review that's coming out this fall?
That's correct, and the science is now just about complete. We've got one more meeting.
How do you know what's in the review if it hasn't been made public yet?
Well, the actual scientific documents have been out now for over a month, and
but the conclusions of the review haven't yet said whether or not.
Well, what we're waiting for now is the options as to what the science suggests should be in terms of changes within the industry. So that's why I said the science is quite clear about the fact that this is a sustainable industry in British Columbia.
Okay, did you want to show the fish before we go to the phone line?
Sure, by all means.
Okay. It's a fish show and tell.
You can see it over.
And I just want to state, though, we will come back to the scientific debate later, because I think that could get quite heated. Maybe some of the callers will have a disagreement with you. While you're getting the fish, let's talk to Frank in Victoria. Go ahead, Frank.
Hello.
Hi, yeah, you're on.
Yeah, this is in regards to fish farming. I don't think there should be any fish farming at all, period.
Right.
Whether it's Atlantic salmon, because I know he said that brought in 175 million, but what's 175 million if something gets loose and all of a sudden a disease starts? And it's no good him telling me that it can't, because it can. All you got to do is look at the ones in Quatsino Inlet. I mean, I was raised up in that country, and I know Christine, and she don't know my voice, but I know her well, and her brothers and the whole family.
Okay.
But no, and not only that, but a lot of the guys that own fish farms, they're ex-environmentalists, they're ex-Greenpeace, and the whole works. And I'm sure she'll agree with me, but I'm against it 100%.
Okay, thanks for the call, Frank. And before we go to the phones, why did you bring us fish?
Well, I wanted people to get a sense of what we do. This is a product that would have come out of the water in the last day or so. It's a fresh product, and that's one of the opportunities we have. We're harvesting it 365 days a year.
Now, in order to, that's an Atlantic salmon, so it's sort of closely related.
This is a Chinook salmon, actually.
It's a Chinook, oh, okay. But with the Atlantics, you have to add a pigment to make the skin pink, don't you?
Some markets prefer pigmentation, and there's two different sources of it.
Okay. I just want to go back to the calls. We've got Darren now from Black Creek. Hi, Darren. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thanks.
I think it's a great topic to bring up. First of all, I've been in the aquaculture experience for 12 years, and I think the Atlantic salmon, it's not an indigenous species. There have been lots of wild escapees running up the Salmon River, the Eve River. A lot of steelheaders are catching them. I'm for aquaculture, but I think we have to get a lot more control. We all know the DFO hasn't done a good job, and the natives are pointing fingers at aquaculture. I think we can do it if the government willingly tries to promote aquaculture. We've got so much to do, but they've let Chile and Norway step in front of us, and now they've got so much fish out there that the Atlantic salmon price right now is very low.
Okay.
So I wish that the government would actually step in, help us out before it is completely too late.
Okay. Betty, in your book, you talk about when they first started, there was only like 8% of the industry had Atlantic salmon, and then it went to like 65% or more. In that, and yet you document quite a few escapees, even one as high as there were 400,000 in 1 year.
Yes, that's right.
And yet, and some fishermen are reporting that they're catching Atlantics in the wild.
Oh, they're constantly catching them with their wild catches. And they're being found in streams all over the West Coast. And they're found as far north as Alaska.
Yeah,
and
actually just over 100 fish have been caught in streams in British Columbia last year.
Yeah, which shows over 21,000 here, but the fishermen indicate more. But one thing that I wanted to get to is that you actually say there's a documented case of an Atlantic salmon trying to spawn with a cutthroat trout.
This was in Roberts Creek. Okay. But when you consider the number of Atlantic salmon that have to be in the stream in order to take over that stream from Pacific salmon, a lot of our streams only have 20 salmon spawning in them.
Oh, they've gone down.
So,
and that's another issue, really.
So if you have 10 Atlantic salmon in there, they'll take over the stream.
Well,
they're more aggressive.
Betty raises a good point. In actual fact, Atlantic are a more docile animal than Pacific fish, and that's why they haven't competed in any jurisdiction where they've been introduced outside of their natal range.
But then a lot of people say they bring in new diseases, too.
Well, in fact, that is absolutely false.
No, so you disagree with me.
New diseases have never been documented, and in the Environmental Assessment Review, it's been quite clear that the diseases found in farm salmon are those that we find in the wild. They were found 40 years before salmon farming ever came to BC.
Okay, we're going to have to take a quick break. Before we do, Betty, you document something where a diseased fish is taken to a private lab, but they won't test it.
That's right. We actually had this happen to ourselves, as well as the documented item in the book. We had diseased fish in Salmon Inlet, and we tried to get them investigated, and we were turned down by the DFO as well.
That might be why there's a little scarcity on the evidence. We're going to come back. I'm sure this is going to heat up a little bit. We'll be taking your calls. We're talking about fish farms and aquaculture. Back after a quick break.
Tyabji is brought to you in part by Metro Lexus Toyota, Victoria and Duncan.
Because there are times when you need a little love. There's Caress, the new fresh cheese from Yoplait, with a taste that'll go straight to your heart.
Here's your Pop-Tart. Another one.
See you after baseball practice.
Got the toaster strudel?
Of course. So when is your mom going to find out about toaster strudel?
Soon, I hope.
Pillsbury Toaster Strudel is like a Pop-Tart, but tastes better, with layers of flaky pastry, juicy filling, and do-it-yourself icing.
So what do you do with the Pop-Tarts?
Pillsbury Toaster Strudel, now available in cream cheese and fruit combinations.
Victoria, British Columbia doesn't close down after the summer sun sets. In fact, Victoria is even more enjoyable now during our secret season. Just call the Canadian Pacific's Empress Hotel and we'll tell you how to save 60% on your room at the Empress. Plus, we'll treat you to the Butchart Gardens, a romantic carriage ride, or Empress afternoon tea free. We have a lot of other little secrets to offer, but you'll have to call to find out more about Victoria's secret season at the Empress.
You know, these Tostitos are baked.
Get out of here.
Really? But so tasty. Oh, I had this party, and I told everyone that baked Tostitos are low in fat, but nobody believed me.
Wow.
Low-fat baked Tostitos have only 1 gram of fat per serving, and they sure taste great.
These are baked?
Mm-hmm.
Get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
Really? They're baked?
No, really. Get out of here.
Low-fat baked Tostitos tortilla chips and Tostitos salsa. Baked Tostitos, now's a good time.
Because there are times when you need a little love. There's Caress, the new fresh cheese from Yoplait, with a taste that'll go straight to your heart.
We're talking about fish farming, aquaculture, an industry that is flourishing worldwide because a lot of people say that it'll be one of the solutions to a global food shortage. But it's pretty controversial. And I'm going to take a call from Lynn Hunter, the former MP. Hi, Lynn. You had a comment?
Yes, Judy. Thanks very much. I just wanted to tell my experience as a member of Parliament when I was sitting on the Environment Committee. The Canadian Environment Committee hosted a meeting with the Norwegian Environment Committee, and this was, I think it was in 1990. And the Environment Committee, sitting in presentation before our Environment Committee, told of the devastation that was going on caused by fish farms where whole fjords were having to be sterilized because of the disease transfer in Norway.
Okay.
And I've just learned also that there is currently, because of that, those kind of problems, that Norway has imposed a moratorium on further development of fish farms in their waters.
Okay, thanks for that, Lynn. And I also noticed that if you look up aquaculture on the internet, that in Finland, they've had to close down a fish farm, and in fact, the government has been forced to buy it out because there have been problems with disease transfer. How do you answer the questions on this?
I'm not familiar with Finland, but I came back from a meeting last night with the International Salmon Farmers Association, and the leaders of the Norwegian industry were present. And I have to say to Lynn that her information is completely inaccurate.
Oh, wait a minute. She's not there anymore, so
well,
just give us your
I'm sure
information.
she's listening. But this industry, there's no question, it's a new industry in British Columbia. We need to continue to improve. And as a consequence, this review is excellent because it allows the opportunity for a full airing of the issues.
Okay, and I promise you we'll come back to this when the review comes out. Vern in Pal River. Hi, Vern.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I got a question here regarding the food of the fish.
Okay.
Are there any chemicals and antibiotics, and if so, can you name the ones and or provide a list to the public? And a quick note here, I believe that Atlantic salmon belong in Atlantic waters and Pacific salmon belong in Pacific waters.
Okay. I want to ask you, Betty, in your book, you talk about a possible alternate food moving to canola as a food source, and you talk a lot about that. I want Betty to get a chance to answer, so tell us what you found out in your research.
It's still experimental. It's being done at the West Van Library, a research station of the DFO, and they're hoping to make use then of one Canadian industry to feed another.
Oh, I see, because it's the second largest.
But it will also cut back on having to use herring to make the fish meal to feed the farm fish.
Right, and there are other additives in the food as well.
Oh yes, there's an enormous number of additives in the food.
Well, actually, that information's come out in the Environmental Assessment Review, and what's happened in Norway, as an example, is that antibiotic use has declined by 97% over the last 4 years.
What do you put in the BC fish food?
About 30% is fish meal, and as Betty says, we're doing experimentation now to try and replace that with canola.
Okay, and how much medicine is in it?
Well, less than 2% of all of the feed in the industry is medicated, which, when you look at other agricultural industries...
It's gone down quite a bit in the last few years.
Yeah, it's 97% in Norway.
Okay, Mike in Burnaby, hi.
Yeah, hi, Judy. I'd like to talk about the concerns of Atlantic salmon spawning in coastal streams.
Right.
I've worked in the aquaculture industry and for provincial fisheries, and what I see is not a concern of escaped Atlantic salmons. What seems to me to be the problem is Atlantic salmon escaping from the hatcheries, and I hope that could be addressed.
Okay. Now, do you know anything about that? Are there BC hatcheries for Atlantic salmon?
Yeah, we we have about 12 hatcheries in British Columbia, and I would suggest that 8 or 9 of them have Atlantic salmon in them. They're certified hatcheries through both the provincial and federal governments.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any fish getting out of hatcheries in British Columbia, but I can look into that issue.
Okay. As I say, when we come back in the fall, we will have to do a bit more justice to this.
There is one example, and that is on Vancouver Island, where a whole truckload of Atlantic salmon were spilled into a stream.
Wow.
And they only recaptured about 800 of them.
Okay. Well, now our last call is Leonard in Comox. Hi, Leonard.
Oh, how are you today?
Fine, thanks.
I would just say that I've been commercial fishing for about 20 years now, and I find that all the farms that I've ever come across and the people that I know that actually work on the farms, they can pollute up to 10 times more than any of the commercial fish boats that I've seen out here. And I just think that it's bizarre that this man would stand on TV and say that they're a perfect thing to use.
Okay. I'll let you answer that, and then I'd like to close with...
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. Something about...
He's saying that there's a lot more pollution from the fish farms than there ever has been from commercial fishing.
Well, again, that issue has been looked at in the environmental assessment review. The comparison between human waste and salmon farm wastes are proved to be not comparable. What the issue is whether there's phosphorus and nitrogen going into the environment of significant levels.
Okay, Betty, last word to you then. What did you find in your book as far as pollution?
Well, as soon as you put a farm into the ocean, that water travels everywhere. Right. So the smallest bit of pollution into one spot can go anywhere it wants.
Okay.
Well,
we're out of time. It's way too short. I have to quickly tell you that tomorrow on the Bill Good Show on CKNW, the future of gambling in BC will be discussed with Cabinet Minister Dan Miller at 1:15. I would like to remind you, Sea Silver is the book. It's written by Betty Keller. It's available at most bookstores for about $10. And Greg will come back to this in the fall when the Salmon Aquaculture Review comes out. Back after a quick break.
By now, most everyone knows that electricity doesn't come from a hole in the wall. But did you know there are easy, power-smart ways to save electricity inside your home? Like washing clothes in cold water, running the dishwasher with full loads on the energy-saving cycle, and turning off unnecessary lights. You save a little money and help preserve the environment. So plug in to PowerSmart for a lot of good reasons. It's the right thing to do.
Potato chips? Oh, yeah, I've heard of them. Chips and dip? Oh, yeah. Oh, stop. Potato thins? Oh, here's one now. Snackwell's Potato Thins. Crispy, crunchy, and each full handful has only half the fat.
If you love to snack, Snackwell's.
I prefer couch potato.
When you pick out new glasses, that's a big decision, but I can make sure you end up happy. You look great. Customers are very comfortable knowing that they have a guarantee at Lens Crafters. I wanted to bring these back. If you end up having second thoughts about your new glasses, you can always come back. No problem. I can replace them, or I can refund your money. At Lens Crafters, no hassles. We'll do whatever it takes to make you happy.
Oh, they look great.
It's not just a guarantee, it's a promise.
Lens Crafters, helping people see better, 1 hour at a time.
You might think your BC Ford and Mercury dealer has a lot of Explorers now, but believe me, these things are gonna be gone. This fully loaded XLS, for instance, is going for a price you will not believe.
Sure is, Lindsay, because right now, a fully loaded XLS Explorer is going for just $366 a month. So you'd better not hang around, because these Explorers won't be.
He's not kidding.
The Great Explorer Clearance starts at $366 a month, ends March 31st.
Paul Hellyer is someone who's been around Canadian politics for over 30 years. He's been involved in the Liberal Party, the Federal Conservative Party, and now he's formed a new party, and it's taking aim at monetary reform in Canada. Some interesting policies on tomorrow's show. Well, I'm very worried about the future of our oceans, but I'm also concerned that as the international community develop a global food strategy, that Canada will be left behind. I don't believe we should be raising Atlantics in the Pacific Ocean, and I do think there are concerns with disease. At the same time, it's not fair to the industry for the federal and provincial governments to be continuing to fumble the ball. It's taken 8 years for the province to get around to a review, which is only coming out this fall. Let's hope we can do justice to the debate at that time. I'm Judy Tyabji, and that's my opinion. What's yours?
During